Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and it's the end where we will begin. This is a position between Bobby Fischer and a computer, Greenblatt, the King's Gambit. It seems okay for black, but it is not. So here in this position, Fischer came up with a crushing idea. So if you want to figure it out on your own, your chance, take a peek. Think about it. Notice also that these bishops, even though they're a bishop pair of their own, they're still kind of passive and it's sort of fighting and firing at granite. However, black's biggest issue is that these guys on the queen side are quite passive and it's sort of a garage sale right there. So noticing that black really has no development, Fischer goes on for a fantastic and a very daring idea. But back to the game and from the start. So this game was played between Fischer and Greenblatt 1977, and what makes it especially special is that Fischer managed to beat the computer with none other than the King's Gambit. He takes f4, accepting the pawn. Now that is a good choice, but it is still not surprising because the early computers loved material. If they ever got their hands on material, pawn, piece, whatever, take it, I want to take them all. That's what they were looking for. And here Fischer comes up with bishop c4, which is quite a strong move and sort of an improvement of the original mainline, which was knight f3. And I'm going to explain to you why bishop c4 is such a fundamental difference between knight f3. Knight f3 is the original mainline, played basically by everybody, from old classics to the new generation. That is, Ivanchuk, Carlsen, everyone plays knight f3 at times, but bishop c4 is the Fischer-approved line. Knight f3, g5 is the main move, and in case of h4, there is g4 hitting this knight, sort of winning time, and black does have that extra pawn after knight e5. Big complications ensue. But bishop c4 is quite an interesting move by Fischer, as here you can go with g5 because white has this idea of h4. No longer do you have this move g4 because it would simply be taken with the queen, d5, queen h5, and if you take here, queen e5 check, and you are losing the exchange. So therefore, g5 no longer works, and you can't really bolster your structure either, because if takes, there is no chance. There is rook takes h8, and you can't keep those pawn chains together. So because of that, black is sort of forced to close down this bishop, which already puts some pressure on the f7 pawn. Therefore, d5 is played by the computer. Bishop takes d5, knight f6. So black is actually giving up a pawn for development. Another side note that I did want to mention, if queen h4 check, I can just go king f1, and in the long run, this queen will be miserably placed on h4, and there is such a thing as castling with hands. So, for example, if knight c6, knight f3, queen h5, white will be able to get the king up to f2 and move the king to g1, switching places. Also, not to mention that white has the lead in development and has all the chances to get better here. The computer decides to give one pawn back. Very uncomputer-like. Knight f6, knight c3, just defending that piece. And knight takes d5 has been played recently by none other than the super talent Wesley So. Knight takes d5, bishop d6, knight f3, castles d4, and this has been played in the game between Adiban and Wesley So, which was a very wild struggle that ended in a draw. But instead, the computer chose bishop b4, knight f3. So if you're new to this whole King's Gambit system, one of the core concepts for white is to first off post the bishop on c4, exert some pressure on f7, try to castle as quickly as you can, and create this number 4. Why is this so important? Because this is the essence of the King's Gambit. Once you get this formation down and you succeed, you're not losing anything, then more often than not, white gets very good play. So no wonder that Fischer is going for the short castling. Castles. Knight takes d5. Now knight takes d5 looks like a tempting choice. However, it would have been much better to chase this bishop away, even in that case, white is a little better, because even though these pawns are doubled, white is going to have the beautiful bishop there. And after knight d7, rook d4, there'll be very many and very much pressure on the d and e files. So instead, the computer decided to take on d5. However, with these exchanges, all of Fischer's pieces get into a better spot. So the knight gets into this great spot. There's pressure on the bishop and the pawn, while this guy on c1 will also have a good time getting ready and attack that pawn on f4. Bishop d6, d4, g5. So if you got your chance, you did think about what's Fischer's big move. It is knight takes g5. Why? Well, because black's pieces are still scattered and are not ready to defend the king side, Fischer goes for the principled continuation and sacrifices the piece, saying, okay, you have not enough pieces there to defend. King takes g5, e5, and here black goes for bishop h3. If bishop e7, there's bishop f4, queen h4, g3, and no longer can that queen stay on this diagonal, and once you lose that bishop on e7, the position is just lost. So instead, black played bishop h3, rook f2. And here comes a series of moves from Fischer that sort of distinguishes him, and it is a big style of his. He plays the most precise way possible and the most prophylactic way. Could white play queen f3 here? Definitely, and it would defend and do the same job, but would actually run into bishop g4 sometimes. So he goes rook f2 and keeps that queen out of the way. Still plenty of threats around. There's no reason to make the situation more complicated. Bishop takes e5, d takes e5, c6, bishop f4, queen g7, check, here, queen h5. Very strong play, bringing the queen in, hitting this bishop, and getting ready to play bishop h6, skewering the queen and the rook on f8. Rook d8, queen takes h3, knight a6, rook f3. Here comes the rook, and it is time to attack that lady on g7. Queen g6, and this is sort of what distinguishes computers from Fischer. Fischer doesn't always play the best move, but the most practical one, which wins most of the time. Now, Rook C1 is again a typical Fischer move, just making sure the computer cannot find any little tricks in the position, over defense, and believe it or not, that queen on g6 is doomed to fail, as after queen g7, rook g3, you cannot move that queen away, just queen h7, checkmate. The king g7 is played, but rook g3 wins the queen. Greenblatt, the computer, plays rook h8, but that loses to this beautiful checkmate, which you cannot really take because of the pin, and is probably one of the nicest checkmates you can see in chess. So I really hope you enjoyed this small lecture on the King's Gambit and how Fischer managed to beat a computer playing this beautiful, beautiful opening. And if you have any thoughts, questions, please ask away in the comments below. And if you liked it, please subscribe. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next time.